EdTech Mondays Africa is supported by the MasterCard Foundation Center for Innovative Teaching and Learning and is part of the MasterCard Foundation Young Africa Works programming.
Hello and welcome to this edition of EdTech Mondays Africa. My name is Joy Doreen Bira. On this edition, we've got a special discussion we'd like to have. Designing EdTech for refugee learners and displaced people across the African continent. As you know, Africa is home to some of the largest displaced populations in the world. And countries like Kenya, Uganda, and Ethiopia happen to host some of the largest refugee populations on the continent. And so knowing that Africa has got a young population, most of them school-going age, we like to find out how are learners in these refugee settlements coping with advancing their education. At what point do they say learning has not stopped and we need to continue with our education no matter where we are? What are some of the technology tools that are available for them to explore so their education does not come to a halt? That's the conversation we'd like to have today on EdTech Mondays Africa as we mark World Refugee Day. And joining us to have this conversation, we've got with us Albina Mumbi, who is the Innovation Manager at Mu-Shule. We have Richard Ombina, who is the Digital Hub and Scholarship Coordinator for the World University Service of Canada, or WUSC. Olivier Nkunzuranda, who is the Chief Executive Officer at Refugee Innovation Center in Romwanja Refugee Settlement in Uganda. Great to have you on the show, Olivier. We also do have Dennis Momanyi, who is the country representative at Jesui World Learning. And we do have Console Movunye, who is a student and also a facilitator, certificate in legal studies. She's based in Kakuma Refugee Camp. Let me begin by asking the question, what are our thoughts around access to education in refugee settlements?
I think, first of all, I'd like to appreciate the fact that there are people who are doing something on the ground in the refugee camps. But we cannot fail to understand that there's some shortcomings that are there. And I believe there's so many things we can do to be able to assist and facilitate these users, because some of the challenges I'd say we have seen in Mu-Shule working in such camps are forms of language barrier. We have people who are working there who are Kenyans and don't understand the language that the people are talking locally. Then we have people who are in the camps and don't have time to actually go to school or cannot access the school facilities themselves. Then we also have the fact that the curriculum itself is not tailor-made for them. So I feel these are some of the things that we need to come together to be able to assist and facilitate these things to ensure that education can be able to reach them.
I love that. Dennis, what are your thoughts around education for learners in displaced communities?
Education cannot be stopped, even if the interactions can come around. But and also we know that education is a human right. So it's better for the organization to come on board, ensuring that they are able to provide the continuity for the learning, so that we are able to create the hope, the innovation we are talking about, so that we are able to make the countries better. And even in the sense that for the refugees who have been able to flee from their homes, they can go back and do the rebuilding. So it's an essential kind of role which we're supposed to play in order to ensure that they are able to stand by themselves and become leaders. And that is the reason as to why we are here.
Olivier, let me hear your thoughts around this, especially knowing that you're dealing also with quite a number of people in the refugee settlement where you are in Uganda.
You have to know that fleeing your country is something that you're not prepared of. And secondly, you leave each and everything. You can't forget even resources. Sometimes you find yourself just in a country whereby you don't really exchange. No one can even listen to you. The language is very different. Coming to the community, cultures are very, very different, and it's a part of learning, So when it comes to education, children, they need to step back so that they can first learn the culture, they learn the language, and also they integrate into the new communities. there is also what we may call the resources, something related to resources. Parents, because of not being able to cater for each and every educational needs, you find they are just dropping out school their children so that they might also just because they can't really cater for education, equating documents. Some of them they flee. War doesn't prepare you. They flee their country without documents, and those with the documents they suffer. So it's been a challenge, especially here where we are.
That's quite interesting, when you mention that when they flee without anything, no paper, no certificate, there's nowhere to start. So everybody has to start from scratch, and building their lives up can be quite a challenge. Richard, let me hear your thoughts around this as well.
It's true that language is an issue. Looking at the Kakuma refugee camp, where we have 21 different nationalities, and you realize that the language of instruction is either English or Swahili. So when you lack that skill to translate maybe into all the different languages, then it becomes a challenge. The other thing is the number of maybe students versus the number of teachers. You find we have large classrooms with over 120 to 150 students to one teacher. How does this teacher even manage that class? So there is really need to build the capacity of teachers in terms of handling large classrooms and pedagogy. And also to put into context what Olivia has said, those who flee from their countries without documentation, and they come and they have to integrate with the local education system in Kenya, there is no proof as to where you have studied. For instance, maybe you are in grade 8 at the time you have in your country. Then when you come back, maybe you're a small-bodied person, and they tell you to go to maybe grade 6. So what happens? Is that not just injustice that we are doing to this person? So these are some of the challenges that we really need to address, and this discussion is timely.
Absolutely. And speaking of all the factors that have been shared here by Albina, Dennis, Olivier, and Richard, we've got with us Console Movuni, who is not just a facilitator for certificate in legal studies, based in Kakuma. She's also a student pursuing her bachelor's degree. Console, I want to hear from you. First of all, how did you get into Kakuma camp? And what has your education journey been like?
I came in Kenya in the year 2001. That was in March. And I was able to come with my parents. After coming to Kenya, we were able to settle in Nairobi. That is the first place that we landed when we came to Kenya. So living in Nairobi, life was not that much easy. So my parents had to relocate and came back to Kakuma. So I can say that the journey in Kakuma started in the year 2002 in August. That is when now I was able to come to Kakuma refugee camp. And by that time I was only 3 years. So my journey to education, I can say it wasn't an easy thing at all. Like being a refugee, coming to a new environment, you are a Rwandan, you doesn't understand anything about Kenya, and you are just, there's nothing that you can do apart from going to school. So coming to Kakuma, I can say that it wasn't easy at all. Life was hard. When it comes to education too, the learning materials were not enough. The teachers were not enough. You could just go to a class and you realize that 200 students are seated in one class and they only have one teacher. So like you grabbing the knowledge that you're supposed to acquire as a learner, it wasn't that much good. Yes, you could just get the skills, but then when you try to go back at home and try to relate what you've been learning in class, it couldn't be very easy because the congestion, the noise in the class, the teacher being tired, like trying to communicate to students from different nationality, different religion, different background. So it wasn't easy. So what really helped me is the self-motivation that I was having in my mind. When I arrived there, I started my preschool just in Kakuma. And then from preschool, I was able to join the primary school. From primary school, then joined the secondary in one of the schools that is called Mu-Shule. It's located here in the camp, and then it's just a girls' school. And then from that, I was able to get a scholarship from JWL. But then at that time, they were having a university that is called Regis University. That is where I did my diploma in social work. So that is how my journey to education was.
And, just seeing the kind of resilience you've had to go through from a classroom of 200 learners, and you've been able to, go against all the odds and still make it to where you're at. What would you attribute that to, in addition to the fact that you got a scholarship?
What really helped me and what made me be able to keep on focusing and even getting the higher thing that I wanted in life was the self-motivation in me. Like when you know what you want in life, regardless of the challenges that you have, you'll always aim higher, and you'll always aim to be able to get what you want. So the self-motivation in me that I wanted to change my life and my parents' life and even my future ahead is what really kept on driving me up to the point where I am right now.
That's interesting. And, when you look at what exactly is happening in these camps, there's so many challenges there. It's one thing to be a motivated learner, but it's another where, you're a girl child, you're facing so many barriers to you accessing education because of the different cultures that are within that setting. So quite interesting that you've shared that. I want to come to you, Dennis, in terms of some of the initiatives that you are running in these settlements. I want to find out from you, what are some of these digital competency levels that you've observed in these settlements? How do you think they are coping with this? Because maybe Console is just one of the few who have made it through. But how are we making sure that these competency levels are increasing for learners in these settlements?
With the coming of the smartphones, and I think they have simplified the competences in digitality, in the sense that when you come to the camp, at least 40% of the residents might be having a smartphone. And in this regard, students or children are able to use the phone for communication. Yeah, they're able to share ideas via the communication. But now the real journey now comes in when they join the post-secondary education. Like now, mostly Console and the group, when now they join the higher education aspect. Here is now when the competences raises to be a little bit proficient for them, because in this state, they are supposed to integrate more with the technology. They're able to use the technology more structurally in submitting their assignments, in getting to join the meetings, in getting to set up the e-tools like Zoom, Google Meet, and the rest when they are discussing with their online faculty and their on-site faculty. Now, in this essence, now you realize that in that aspect, they're able to be more frequent users. They even go to an extent of now becoming the leaders and also the pioneers within that aspect. That number due to the resource scarcity within the refugee camp and the EdTech to promote the competences to the higher levels.
I'm going to come to you, Albina, but I wanted to first hear from Olivier. The Refugee Innovation Center in Ramwanja refugee settlement, where you're at, I want to hear from you how acquisition of digital skills is helping these learners progress with education, and if at all they even have access to the tools that are necessary to help them advance their education.
It's a refugee setting whereby it's just in the building period, whereby most of people that they have been just using offline activities, paperwork, and so on. So, but for now, when COVID-19 broke into the world, it gave us just a lesson whereby we need just still to create more concrete and collaborated arena, whereby just we need still to maintain the communication, we maintain the learning, we maintain everything, just comes just to one center and it becomes a village. So we we thought of something that everyone just can still using to feed with learning. We brought in digital library. Digital library, whoever had a smartphone, we had to install their BookSmart. BookSmart is an application whereby you can just download and access reading books, textbooks just offline. Another thing, after COVID-19, we brought in the digital library, which is normally Refugee Innovation Center distribute libraries and establish new small libraries just throughout the camps. So then we were like, what if children just want to learn from inspirational speakers, from TED Talks, maybe they want to read some materials from Wikipedia and so on. We got just a partnership with an organization called Precious Paths that linked up with Wikipedia and TED Talk speakers, and they gave us access to more than 6 million learning materials that children can access. So for now, I believe the only challenge we have just is few learning equipments like computers. They're very few, and you find it is just in one center. But because the camp is very big, when you go just to the other locations, they are not really accessible.
Exactly. And I guess when everyone has an opportunity to education, then they have an opportunity to change the lives of those around them with the opportunity to learn and prosper and, get access to dignified and fulfilling work. And I want to come to you as well, Albina, based on what you said about languages and the cultures and what Connie has just told us about her journey of education or accessing education. Mu-Shule is one of those platforms that are for diverse learning activities. But tell us a bit more about what tools are there for learners in the settlements like Console and even those who are younger than her.
What we do at Mu-Shule is we sat down with our partners who are actually on the ground. And we got to understand some of the needs that they have. Because I know most projects in Kenya fail because we don't go to the ground. We just do from the top to the bottom instead of bottom up. So what we do, for example, in the language barrier, our content, we tailor make it for that particular child, for that particular audience there. So we have content in, for example, Ngaturkana, Somali. So that is one of the ways that we are approaching some of those problems. Then another issue is accessibility to schools, as Consile has said. Yeah. And what we do is our platform is in a way that each child can access. So we did a research and we saw at least in every household there's one gadget, a phone. They may lack the TV, they may lack the radio, but a phone, and this is a basic phone. In Kenya, we call this the kabambe, the button phone, yes. So they can use that to learn when they're in the comfort of their home, and it is self-paced. So go there, learn when you're alone, without interruptions. And because we know some of these people in the refugee camps have some cultural backgrounds and some of the things that they do culturally. So for example, the ladies left at home to do a lot of house chores. The boys are taken to herd cows. So these are some of the things we look when we are tailor making this content. Another issue we have is I also grew up with this American curriculum where you're told X for xylophone. I have never seen a xylophone to date. We want to make this content in a way that these children in Kakuma, in Dadaab, all over Africa can understand what we are telling them. So if we're saying A for apple, do they know what an apple is? Or do we want to say A for something that they understand? So those are some of the things that we are looking at. And not only just looking at it from our perspective, but actually going to the ground and working with these people to understand what is relative to them, what makes sense to them. Then we also want to create a platform where they can have the confidence to learn by themselves. Though I know CBC is coming to change a lot of these things where we had I'm number one, I'm number two. So some of these children feel demoralized because I know as Olivier has said, they have left everything at home or in their country, so they don't have these papers. So when they come here, they need that confidence to be able to backtrack and be able to catch up with the Kenyan system and be able to catch up.
It's actually good that you mentioned that you have content in different languages that these young people can be able to comprehend. But at what levels, what stages? Are we talking about the ECD level, or we are going higher than that as well?
We have gone higher than that. As I say, we custom make. So like one of the projects we were working on, we were working with the grade 1 to grade 8. And what we did is we used languages that they can understand. So instead of saying Sarah said hi, we say Juma, or we look for Aisha, something that they can relate to. Instead of using very hard terms for these young children, we want to be custom make the language to fit them, so that by the end of the day, they may not learn the way children in Nairobi or let's say in Uganda are learning, but at the end of the day, they will be at the same level that they need to be.
I like that. And just looking at that perspective, because at the end of it all, you want to get a child from Consolee's level. If she got into the camp at the age of 3, and now to where she is today, and she's able to express herself, confidently, and even pursue a career of her choice, I think that is something that we need to pick up as a lesson. But of course, there are so many barriers that refugee learners do face as well. But before we even get into those barriers, I want to hear from you, Richard. You have different initiatives as WOSC that are currently running in helping with TVET training in these settlements. How is that going so far? And probably you could also tell us about some of the challenges that you are experiencing from both the refugee side, but also from a working side as an organization trying to change the narrative.
Looking at the refugee camps, we realize that there are two groups that we've only spoken about the refugees, but forgotten about the host communities that are surrounding them. And they're also part of the activities that we do. So in relation to TVET, our mandate there is to offer skills that are market-driven. And we work from an angle where we assess the market. What are the skills that the market is demanding? Then we contextualize what we are doing and our curriculums in line with those skills that are in demand. So we've been working closely with the National Industrial Training Authority and working with them closely to assess the centers that we work with. Are they up to standards? Do they have the right equipment? Do the trainers have the right skills so that they can even implement these projects? Then at the end of the day, once the skill is ready for market, we take a holistic approach where we say, in today's world, you need ICT as a skill set. So every participant within the TVET training has to undergo basic ICT skills so that if, for instance, you're doing hairdressing or you're doing electrical and solar installation, at the end of the day, you need to set the skills. So we work closely with our trainers, the ICT trainers who offer this skill set. And then apart from that, we also look into financial literacy. As much as we are saying we're giving you a skill, then you're supposed to earn money from this skill. How do you even do the basics of financing and managing the money that you'll get out of this skill set? And some of the challenges that we do face is we see there is proximity, the distance from one center to another. And you realize that most centers are within the camps. And we have the host participants who have to travel a long distance into the camp to get the training. So as a project, we've been looking and working closely with institutions within the host community. And we bring in experts to look at the institutions and verify if they meet the minimum standards for training. And host community participants are able to go into these institutions. The other challenge was around language barrier. You realize that out of the 21 nationalities, for instance, our program has been able to deal with 16 different nationalities within our training. So we've contextualized our curriculum in a way that we have translators who can speak the different languages. Remember, TVET is more on competency based. So 80% of the time it's the hands-on skills, 20 is the other skills that you're taught in class. And for us, we've been able to work closely with the translators and offer the skills even to those people who do not understand how to read and write. They're able to see and learn. And at the end of the day, if you're able to deliver the skill or deliver the products to the end user, then we've met our objective as an organization.
And so, when you talk about that, it, gets the mind thinking around the different challenges that you might experience, because if you're having to deal with, say, 16 languages in those settlements, how easy is it to get these translators, or in this case, dealing with, being able to break down some of this content to the different nationalities? And I'm sure Consolé also will have something to say about this, but I want to hear your thoughts around this as well.
These refugees or displaced persons come with skills from the country that they come from. So there are those who can speak fluently both English and another language, maybe 2 or 3 languages. And during our project implementation, we map out the skills that you have before coming into the program. So we know that you can speak French, you can speak maybe Swahili, and you can speak, maybe another person can speak Rwandese. So what we do is we utilize that skill set that you already have, then bring you on board, train you as a trainer of trainers, equip you the necessary skills that are required to manage a classroom management, pedagogy, and then utilize the National Industrial Training Authority to equip you the necessary skills to be able even to translate the manuals that you have. So each center is given a manual, and then the manuals are being translated by these persons that we've identified. And over time, we build their capacity so that in case of attrition, maybe you're resettled, you go with the skill set. What happens to the project? So you bring others on board and then.
From what I'm hearing around the initiatives that we are all currently running in the different settlements that we are working in, there's just one common factor, is that these are diverse services that we are giving or offering to these refugees or people living in displaced communities. And I think that does speak to the fact that when you're talking about education, there's no one size fits all, because the brick and mortar or, 4 walls in a classroom and a blackboard doesn't really work for, say, learners in a refugee settlement, but they can still continue learning with the different initiatives that are currently ongoing. Consolé, I want to come to you now and hear from you around the fact that technology has been a big boost in your education to date. Tell us about that, and maybe you could also point into some of the challenges you have experienced with technology as a student, and how you think you've been able to navigate the same.
Being an online student, you're not going to any class, you're just going to interact with your gadgets. So your gadgets is your teacher, your gadgets are your friends, and your gadgets are the ones that you take most of your time interacting with. So I can say that it has helped me become a self-centered person. Like I can do my things without being followed up. Like, when you're in an on-site class, there must be somebody who is there telling you to do this or that. But then with these online studies, you are a director of yourself. So this is one of the things that I really loved from the technology, because you even have more chances of doing more research because you're having the internet, you're having the gadget. So you can even be able to learn more and explore more from other people who have made it in life. And I can say that is one of the things that helped me from the technology, because at a time, when I want to learn something, or when I want to achieve something, I could go through the website and then try to look at some of the TED Talks, like some of the women who made it in life, some of the women who are like self-motivated, those women who achieved because of education. So at the time I could just go through the different websites, look for them. That is one thing I can say about technology. With technology, you can be able to explore more. But then when you're in an on-site class, yes, the teachers will be able to tell you things, but then they won't go into deeper because they'll just be giving you what they're supposed to give. But then with technology, you can go an extra mile of even doing research and trying to learn more of the things that you never know. So some of the challenges that I was able to go through, one of it was the internet connection. So at a time when you come to class, yes, you're motivated, you have a lot of things to do, but then you come to the learning center, there's no internet, maybe the power is not working. So you're like, what am I going to do now? So you even feel like demoralized. You feel like being turned down because you came all that long from where you're staying. You've used your transportation. You've lived a lot of things you're supposed to do. And then coming to the learning center, there's no internet, there's no power. So at a time, it really used to drain me back. But then because I knew what I wanted, I could search for a solution. For instance, if I find that this place doesn't have an internet connection, I could try go to other places, maybe to the cyber, so that I can be able to get the internet to do my work.
Dennis, I want to hear from you because we're now coming to the part where we want to talk about inclusion, because we already know that refugees and people living in displaced communities are categorized as marginalized or under-resourced and underserved. But how do we make education in these same settlements more inclusive? Because it's one thing to be a refugee, but it's another thing if you have to be a refugee and say disabled, or a refugee and maybe having another challenge as well. So having to have all of these challenges in one is going to mean that there has to be a high level of inclusivity when we are offering these services. How do we make sure that we are being inclusive even in these settings?
The students like Console and the scalability of the program within the Kakuma refugee camp, mostly in the higher education. This is the push which made the Jesuit Worldwide Learning in the year 2010 to be able to bring this rare commodity to the youths within the refugee camp. And in their collaboration with the accredited universities, they were able to bring the university to the community. So when the university were in the community and the students were being enrolled, the way Consola is saying, they come in, the internet isn't working, they are leaving. So what did we do to ensure that these issues have been resolved? So this is a place where Jesuit Worldwide Learning came out with different measures. Number one, the kind of platform we use right now is not the platform we used to use, because right now we have a user-friendly kind of LMS, student management system, which students are able to interact with, send their emails, they're able to do the discussions, and it doesn't really require a lot of connectivity for it to work. The other platform we looked into was in regard to the resources, because with the unstable internet connectivity, they are not able to download. Now, what will be done? Then now the JWL Hub came out with an online and offline app which can be used within the mobile phones, where the students can be able just connect with the connectivity which is there, and they're able to download and they're able to save the materials offline, so that in this they're able to discuss from to learn from wherever they are, because they're being able to get the materials.
Some of these refugees living in these settlements find it even difficult, say, to access something like a SIM card, because to have a SIM card, you need some form of identification to be able to access that. And by default, they are locked out of a lot of things, like access to content and access to, acquisition of skills and stuff like that. But tell me about the partnerships that you're having that are trying to help to, make life easier for the refugees that you are currently helping or supporting.
For the longest time, documentation has been a challenge and still is a challenge. Whether you're trying to access a credit facility, whether you're trying to register a SIM card, whether you're trying to register yourself into a learning institution, documentation has been a challenge. And one of the major partnerships that we've had is with SciCan Colleges and Institutes Canada, where we've worked them in our TVET work under scholarships. And you realize that refugees were not part of the government capitation program that allows you to pay half the school fees. So if you're not a Kenyan, then you have to pay the full amount. But through the partnership, they have been able to lobby around and reduce that to half the amount, and they're paying as equal as Kenyans. Also documentation, using the manifest as a registration document into a TVET institution for the longest time was a challenge. But you realize that through the partnership, the 5 nationalist TVET institutions that we work with were able to allow us take our scholars to those. Some have even graduated. When it comes to access to credit facilities, access to even opening an account just to be able to run a business and save has been a challenge. In terms of SIM card registration, a lot of participants have been blocked out. You remember there was a time when the major service providers were shifting and they required you to have a registered SIM card. And tracing our participants was the biggest challenge at that point, because you have a contact and where this person is living. So if you go to where this person is living, you do not find them, the easiest way is to call them. If that number is blocked, then simply you've lost your participant. So we've been able to work closely with the service providers, and a number of participants have been able to be registered, and this helps us in also tracking them and knowing their whereabouts, and even communicating with them become easier.
So as we bring this conversation to a close, I believe that the key goal here is for us to be able to design education tools that are technology enabled to allow for refugee learners and those living in displaced communities to be able to have continuous learning, so it can pave the way for them to prosper at the end of it all. If they're able to learn, then they are on the right pathway to be able to access dignified and fulfilling work. So how do we make sure, to those who are listening and those who are in positions of changing policy and positions of changing how education is consumed, how do we make sure that they are listening to these solutions? What are the solutions, the final solutions that we have to make sure that they are considered and that they are implemented to make them more inclusive for all, and not just for refugees, but for everyone who might need access to education?
The current world is leading us to digital world, and it's already digital. And if it wouldn't be digital, I wouldn't be here just presenting something like this just in a video.
Right.
Someone else is listening. So now what I think government should put much more efforts, much more money in digital world. So make sure that all your children from the classroom, from EC, the RHL development, children are just coming out, growing up with digital world. So secondly, digital technology makes things a little bit cost effective when it comes to, for example, when you're using gadgets just in a classroom, viewing maybe different materials, it would have costed the school just to print out papers, number of books, just for children to access them for every year, every term. But this time, it's just a matter of just a tablet. You look at the savings that you have. If a school is there just for 50 years, so you've been using a gadget, so it will be a little bit cost effective, less expensive.
Albina, I want to hear from you. How do we make education more inclusive where technology is concerned?
The first thing I think I would talk to is the service providers, to make sure that some of these places are accessible. Because from our experience working with people, especially maybe I can say like Northeastern, they have the phones, they have the phone number, but you can't reach them because there are no boosters and there are no ways to access them. Then I think too, I'd also speak to the policy and the curriculum people, because I think the curriculum is tailor-made for people who can access quality education. And if they can make this curriculum in a way that it is standardized, yes, but the way it is implemented should tailor make each and every child from different places, because I know we are speaking about the refugees and also the displaced people, but look at the situation of the children in rural areas. This curriculum also doesn't suit them. Then also looking about the language barrier that we have talked about. Teachers who are sent there are from these other regions. We don't have teachers who are trained by the government to go and teach these people. Or if we do, they are talking our local language. So how do we cope with that? What are we doing to look at those people to make sure that their quality education and that they move from one place to another? So I feel that the policy makers, the curriculum structure, and also the accessibility of this technology needs to be improved, if I can say so.
All right. Improving the technologies that work around education for people living in these settlements. Dennis, very briefly, what is your final take on using technology or designing, EdTech for learners in refugee settlements?
We have been having players who have been in the ground for long. They have persevered the challenges. They now have the solutions. So my first call is to call upon the like-minded partners to be able to give more support in order to scale up the already provided opportunities within the Kakuma refugee camp.
Richard, over to you. What are your thoughts in terms of making sure that everyone gets the education they need backed by technology?
Number one, I'd speak about coherence, and I'm glad Dennis thought about the issue of many actors within the space doing the same thing, but they're actually dedicating resources, which in this case, these resources could be channeled maybe in building capacity to ensure that at the end of the day, the deliverable is of quality. Number two is around sustainability. We see a lot of projects come, maybe they do the implementation in 3 years, they go. What is the post impact after project closure? Can we attribute the success 2, 3, 4, 10 years after the project has closed? Actors within the space need to ask themselves that question and ensure that the programming within the refugee and displaced context is sustainable.
Great, thanks a lot. And our final parting shot coming from Console, as someone who has lived the experience in these refugee settlements, probably you could talk to us about what exactly you think needs to be done right, or what you would want done right for the learners who are coming after you.
What I can suggest, one thing, let all those ones who are offering the online platforms be able to bring the hubs near to the students. So that we can be able to minimize the movement of the students from one setup to another setup. They could think of bringing more hubs near to the community. Like they identify a community or a center whereby they can be able to target different youths from different nationality. This one will really help the students from moving from one place to another place, and even the issues of insecurity will be able to be minimized. The other thing I can also suggest is that they can be able to come up with the learning platforms which are friendly to the students. You'll be able to realize that some learning platforms are not friendly to the students. Like a student will even have, they will struggle a lot so that they can be able to get where the library is, the library of the learning they are going through. Some of them will even find it hard to interact with the platforms which are there. So those ones who are offering the online courses or those ones who are having the online platforms, they're supposed to come up with a best tool whereby the students can be able to get the learning materials very easy.
What a wholesome conversation we just had around EdTech, or designing EdTech for refugees and displaced learners. I think that there's so much we can carry forward, but would like to hear your feedback. Email us edtechmondays@mastercardfdn.org. Would like to hear from you, and you can also follow us on all our social media handles. Until the next edition, my name is Joy Doreen Bira. Thank you all for watching, and I look forward to seeing you on the next conversation. Bye-bye for now.
EdTech Mondays Africa is supported by the MasterCard Foundation Center for Innovative Teaching and Learning and is part of the MasterCard Foundation Young Africa Works programming.